Welcome to the weekly podcast of First United Methodist Church in Costa Mesa, California. Founded in 1912, the church gathers on Sundays at 10 a.m., and we invite you to join us anytime. For more information, visit our website, costamesafirst.umc.com, or connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.
Today's reading is from Amos, chapter 5, verses 21 through 25. I despise your festivals, and I take no delight in your solemn assemblies. Even though you offer me your burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. And the offerings of well-being of your fatted animals I will not look upon. Take away from me the noise of your songs. I will not listen to the melody of your harps. But let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Did you bring to me sacrifices and offerings the 40 years in the wilderness, O house of Israel? The word of God for the people of God.
All right. So I just want to start with saying thank you all for your wonderful grace every Sunday when I get up and I run a service that I'm not always familiar with. And some of you might be like, Darcy, you've been here since 2016. Yeah, but I was not raised Methodist. And so depending on my role on a Sunday, sometimes the order of things leave my brain. So I appreciate all of that. This morning, we're going to be talking about this passage and continuing in the series, For the Bible Tells Me So. And part of the reason that I was like, oh, I need so much grace this morning because I am not a studied theologian, friends. My degrees are in the how and why of history and culture. And as we know, the Bible has a lot of history in it and a lot of culture in it. So I guess it's in my wheelhouse in that way. And one of the things that I thought about when I was reading this passage is I used to work in the jewelry industry. And one of the things that we'll be talking about this morning is how Amos, the original famous Amos, way before the cookies, is talking about really the idea of all show and no substance. And when I was in the jewelry industry, people would bring me piles of stuff, a lot of times from estates or things that they had found. And it was my job to sort through what was real and what was not. I have told Sean so many times, heaven forbid something happened to me, take my jewelry box to my old bosses because they will know what is real and what is not. There's really subtle ways to play up fake jewelry. And there's some not so subtle ways as well. One of the quickest ways in the industry that we could tell if gold was not real is to run a magnet over it, because real gold does not magnetize. Pot metal that has been covered in gold will magnetize, right? And so I've been thinking about this kind of idea of all show and no substance. It's one of the first things I will look at when I encounter someone, not because I'm being judgy, it's just because that's where my training goes. On men, I will look at if you have a wedding ring on, and I will look at what kind of watch you're wearing. Ladies, depending on your level of accessories, I will take it all in because I'm just trying to see kind of where you're at with your level of kind of show. Understand, I'm the laziest peacock, you all. I am like, this is very dressed for me. I have casual clothes to change into, but I love jewelry. But I also know that there can be a lot of show and not a lot of substance in things, right? The other thing that I thought about this morning, or as I was getting ready for this morning, was I was thinking about the man in black, Johnny Cash. And part of the reason why I was thinking about Johnny Cash is because when I think about the ideas of justice and injustice and how we show people that we stand for justice is the fact that Johnny Cash wore black to stand in for these people. So I decided to wear all black today as we talk about the people we should represent. He has a very famous song called The Man in Black, and it wasn't until the 1970s when he was on the Mike Wallace show sitting next to James Brown, the godfather of soul. It's a great interview if you want to watch it. After Johnny had come out of addiction and had come out of rehab and come out of his time in jail, where Mike Wallace actually asked him, why do you wear black all the time? And instead of giving an answer, Johnny said, let me sing the song. And some of the lyrics of that song is, he wears black for the poor and the beaten down, the hopeless and the hungry, the prisoner who has long paid for his crime but has been forgotten by time, those who have never heard or read the words of Jesus. And to me, I take that to mean people who have never experienced that level of love, the sick and lonely olds, those in mourning, and those on both sides of conflict who have lost. So that is part of the reason why I wear black today, because we are talking about justice and injustice. And we'll be talking about 3 different aspects of this. And what I think Amos is really talking to us about in this part of the Bible. One of those is the idea of agenda, right? The second is coming to the table with assumptions. And the third is apathy, right? Because at the end of this passage, Amos is talking about letting justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Oh, that's so beautiful. It's a beautiful sentiment about justice and righteousness. But like so many things in the Bible before it, he's like, Let me talk about some of the things that I have concerns about, right? So we have to address those things. But we have to really talk about what he says in the beginning, right? And also about who Amos was, okay? Amos is the first Hebrew prophet to ever get his own book, thus the true first famous Amos. But he did not come from a family of prophets. He was a shepherd and a fig grower. So a farmer and a shepherd. And he is sent to talk to the elite of Israel, those who are not caring for those around them, those who are not loving thy neighbor, right? Those who are not obeying the commandments, but are really just about financial gain. And the elite, because Amos does not come from the elite, dismiss him. Who is the shepherd? Who is this fig grower? Sounds like someone else that shows up in the New Testament of the Bible. This carpenter who goes around being like, I wouldn't do that. That's not cool. Let me flip this table, right? And he's so like Jesus, who would come later, gets dismissed. So Amos is not sitting around going like, hello, everyone, I'm a prophet. I come from a long line of prophets. Do you understand the legacy of the prophets in my family? That is not what Amos is saying. He's just like, these things aren't right. You are not caring for these people. And he starts in this part of the passage, right? We're in chapter 5 at this point of the book of Amos. So it's not like from moment 1. But he says, I hate. Hate is a strong word. I despise your festivals. He is not talking about Coachella, friends. He is not talking about Stagecoach Festival. He's talking about these festivals of show and no substance. These kind of celebrations of look how amazing we are and all of the things we do, but there's no substance in them. I take no delight in your solemn assemblies. I feel like in some form or another, whether it be in a church setting or not, we've all been in a meeting like this, right? Where we're called together because a thing has happened. An incident has happened. And so we need to get together and game plan about how we're going to change these things. How are we going to take action? How did this happen? I just don't understand. How did this injustice, this hate crime, this racist incident, how did these things happen and what can we do? And people sit around and they talk and they cross-talk, but then nothing happens. But then people can at least say, we had a meeting about it, right? We had a meeting about it. It was a very solemn, it was a very somber thing. No one was happy to be there, but we met. But the whole meeting doesn't lead to anything, right? Then he says, even though you offer me your burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. And the offering of well-being of your fatted animals, I will not look upon them. And I think here, this is where Amos is really talking to us about the intention of sacrifice, right? What are we bringing to the table? And why are we bringing it, right? Remember years ago in youth group, back in the day, when I was a Presbyterian, do not judge. It was the church I was invited to, right? But I remember our youth pastor talking about your external needing to match your internal, right? Which is the opposite of what our culture tells us. Our culture says, fake it till you make it. Fake it till you make it. If you're not feeling it, just, if you put on a smile, eventually you'll get there. But when it comes to what we are sacrificing, and when we are coming before God, I don't want empty sacrifices. I don't want you faking it till you make it. I want you to be here, and I want you to offer up your sacrifice, but with pure intentions, right? If you've ever volunteered somewhere, that's a joy of a mixture of different kinds of people for sure, right? Because you've got those people that you can tell are there to be there because their head is down, they're working on whatever, you kind of talk to them, they will hand you tools, you will get things from them, maybe you're directed towards them. And then there's, the volunteers that are like a little work, a little engaging, things are good, right? And then there's the folks that are more volunteering to talk about how much they're volunteering, and then they're not actually doing anything. But they want to be able to say, oh, look, I was at that event. Here's the picture, right? I would see that I think it's like Orange Coast magazine, right? That always has those charity balls where the very wealthy come out and are like, look at who we've supported. Hello, great. Because there's that photo moment, right? And yet, there's so many people behind the scenes putting that event on. I spent 11 years with a social justice campaign to free 3 young men who had been wrongly accused and jailed for 3 murders they did not commit. And during that time, I kind of became the go-to person for their support group to put on fundraisers. And I think it's just because I didn't say no. I just was like, all right, I'll put these things on. And so there were people that would hit me up for a charity fundraiser where we needed to raise money and would ask if they could have complimentary tickets. No. I'm proud to say I never comped anyone in that entire time because we were there for a purpose, and the purpose was not for you to be able to go in on Monday morning and say, guess where I was this weekend? Because 3 young men who at 16, 17, and 18 had gone into jail because of a broken justice system in their very small town in Arkansas, needed every single dollar that came in that door. I even told HBO they couldn't film because it would take up seats in the theater we were at one point. That was a weird phone call, y'all. To be like, hello, HBO, you can't come and film because I need all these seats. It was a small theater, right? And that is not me telling you, hey, look how great I am and how not good they are. It just purely is an example from my own life, right? Because I had these teams of people that volunteered their time, just like the people that volunteer their time here on Sundays and at our events, right? David is not trying to bother you into volunteering. It's because it takes a group of us to make these events happen and to welcome people in. And Amos is saying, don't be the person that just talks about how much you are volunteering and not actually doing anything, right? And then he goes on to say, take away from me the noise of your songs. I will not listen to the melody of your harps. And this idea of empty praise and empty worship, right? I don't know how many of you are watching the new show, The Righteous Gemstones on HBO, which follows a very large megachurch televangelist family. And as Sean was watching it, my husband, who did not grow up in evangelical tradition at all, but our friend Jay did. His parents were on television, and they faced a lot of things. Sean said to me, this hits really too close to home for a lot of people, huh? And I was like, yes, it does. Because again, here they are, and there's this opening scene where after they leave their Sunday service, they each get into a white Range Rover. And their white Range Rovers drive them to different places on the compound, on their big church compound, where there is an amusement park, And they each have their own house on the compound. But again, it's that here we are on Sunday mornings. Give us your tithes, give us your worship. And here's the thing. I don't judge that size of church. We're a smaller church, for sure. We do not have our own television show, though I think it would be fantastic. But it's about that intentionality of what are we doing? Are we just showing up on Sunday? Are we just showing up to say, oh, look, I was there. I was in church, right? And for many years, I know we just came through the season on deconstruction. I felt like I had to be in church on Sundays, whether I wanted to or not, to be like I was there. See? Did you see me? I was there. And there was a lot of this guilt and shame that had said you need to be there because part of being a Christian and a believer is showing how much of a Christian and a believer you are. Dressing the part, saying the right words, dating the right person. It's a lot. And I'm still untangling those things. Sean's not going anywhere, don't worry. He's good. But I still hear what I call Christianese in certain things. And it takes me back because I'm like, ooh, that's that language of the church, which can be very beneficial, but it can also be really empty, right? When the church doesn't know what to say, when we are calling for justice, and there is nothing but empty, well, just praise him and just read these passages in the Bible. Sean and his first Sunday in this church was after the last election. Sarah had no idea the responsibility she was taking on for us that day. But I was finally ready to come back into a community where we would be radically intergenerational and all affirming at all levels. And we've been hunting for that for a number of years. But I came in and we stayed in this space because I felt that the people that were here wanted to actually be here. And I wanted to be here, right? In this inclusive space of people doing the work, right? And that doesn't mean that we are a perfect congregation by any means. We still have our challenges. But I wanted to be in a space that said, regardless of what side of things you are on, we will see justice and love in the middle. Whether you want to be more conservative or more liberal, we will seek that love that God has for us. Right? And Amos, his name means to carry, right? And as the prophet, he's not just carrying these messages, he's also carrying responsibility with him. And being the messenger, right? Don't shoot the messenger, but Amos is the messenger. And they're not hearing it. They're just like, fig farmer, shepherd, what do you have to say? You don't know us, right? But I think part of what he is addressing here, right, outside of just calling people out on hollowness, is the idea of agenda. And that we have to set aside our agendas with people. Because these folks were coming for financial gains, right? They wanted to move forward. They wanted to be the top person in their community. But that means that there's agenda. Their actions all had agenda. And as Christians, I'm sure we've all seen this, right? Even if you are not a believer and you are sitting with us today, you have probably seen this, right? The idea of, I will love this person and show God to this person in the hopes that they will then become a believer as well. It's so loaded. It's really loaded. It's part of the reason I have trouble with missionary work, because it has a different kind of agenda, right? And as an academic advisor, I have to consider my agenda all the time, because students come in, my job says I'm supposed to help them pick classes and help them on their academic journey. So I can use the tools that we have in our in our digital world to look at, okay, this student needs these classes, maybe the student's having a tougher semester. But if I go in to that student and just say, oh, I know what you need, and I just put forth my agenda, I'm going to miss out on what that person actually needs. Prime example of this is I had a student that came in with his mother, and he was not doing well in classes, was failing, was on academic probation. So I asked a lot of the questions. Do you like your major? How is this class going? What's going on? And all of that was, yeah, I like my major. I don't want to switch my major. And then I asked the question that surprises a lot of parents that I ask, but I asked, how is your social life? Who are your friends? Who are you hanging out with? And this student revealed to me he did not have any friends. He did not have a social life. And he used the phrase, and I will never forget it, I feel like a phantom walking through a dark mist, and that nobody can see me. Because he was lonely and he was hungry for community. And we ended up getting him the help he needed. But if I'd just gone in saying, here's my agenda, I'm going to advise you, you're going to pick these classes, and this is how you get off academic probation, I would have missed what he really needs. And one of the things that we do with agenda is sometimes we assume, right? So going from agenda to assumption about what people actually need. So if a student shows up and says, I don't have a backpack, and we go, oh, if you don't have a backpack, everyone must not have a backpack. So let's get everyone backpacks. And then you're handing backpacks to students who are like, I have a backpack. This is not what I needed, right? And it's not that our heart is not to help, but it's that we didn't actually find out what people really need because we decided on our own agenda on those things, right? It's the difference between equity and equality, right? Where equality gives everyone the same thing. You all get a backpack. It's very Oprah. You get a backpack, and you get a backpack, and you get a backpack, right? But equity says, what do you need? And fits that need. What do you need? And fits that need. So I think Amos is talking about us letting go of our agenda and loving our neighbor in all the ways that we should love our neighbor, right? Homeless neighbor, Muslim neighbor, black neighbor, gay neighbor, white neighbor, Asian, Jewish, Christian, atheist, disabled, addicted. And yes, while this is a meme from the internet, I think it drives home a really important point about what we need to do, right? Is making sure that we are loving people exactly where they're at and without agenda, without hoping that our love and our justice for those folks will be a means to an end, right? I liked this other meme too, which is Jesus, love thy neighbor and do not judge others. And then someone says, what if they're different from me? And then Christ says, did I stutter? Right? It's a little harsh, but that's kind of how I feel. And I feel like Amos is saying the same thing. Don't do a bunch of shows. Don't wear a bunch of costume jewelry saying, oh, this is all real and this is legitimate. And then it is not, right? And I think the last thing that he is talking about when he is talking about letting justice flow like water and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream is that all of these festivals and all of these meetings and all of these solemn assemblies and all of these conventions can cause us to be apathetic to the justice we really need to be calling out. Because we cannot let justice roll down if we are not willing to get out of its way, and if we're not willing to get in its way, right? We are a very fortunate congregation. We are all-inclusive at all levels, not just welcoming, all-inclusive at all levels. We are intergenerational. We have young children. We have folks celebrating the anniversary of their 15th birthday, right? We have these things, and that is incredible for us. But we can't just stop here. We can't just be like, we're good, we're doing it well. We have to call out the injustices as we see them. I have 37 freshmen and 1 transfer student in my class this semester. And they are learning a lot about systemic racism and homophobia and sexism and misogyny. And I have told them several times, I am not here to tell you who to vote for because none of them were old enough to vote in the last election. And I have to remember that. But what I do tell them is regardless of party lines, we can call out racism. We can call out homophobia and transphobia. We can call out sexism and misogyny because you do not have to be on one side or the other to recognize the humanness in one another. Because when we call out justice for those things, what we're truly calling out is the humanness in one another and recognizing you are human and I am human. And if we are truly to be allies for one another in this world, we have to call those things out. Is it easy? No. Is it always safe or comfortable? Especially when it comes to things like our family or maybe other congregations or religious groups we're a part of? No. But we need to, because we need to stop feeling safe all the time because there are other people feeling unsafe. And that's where we have to check our privilege, right? Check who we are. Because that is when our sacrifices and our offerings become about substance and not show, right? And so these are the things I really feel like Amos is telling us, right? Let go of your agendas. Let go of your assumptions. And do not be apathetic to those who need our help. Because when you show up and go, look at all the great things I've done, right? He's going to ask, what have you really done? What have you really done? Because it's so much more about doing and not talking about it, right? I know it's not easy to do these things, but we are the light. You do not have to be the stadium lights, friends. And it's easy to be cynical, like, how can I change things? We're talking about it today, about the idea that we can change each other's lives every day with simple, genuine interactions. That we might be the only person that truly asks someone, how are you today? Are you okay today? Where are you at today? How can I help you today? So I want to ask you to be that light and to be, and I don't stand here to talk about Amos to be condemning or to be judging, because I have to remind myself, because Lord knows I go through the action some days. But to remind us that we are to show up with our exterior matching our interior. And so I want to leave you with this quote from Cornel West. Never forget that justice is what love looks like in public. It's a lot to unpack, but it's also really simple. Thank you so much, and let us pray. God, thank you for this morning. Thank you for reminders about how our external and our internal need to match. Thank you for us being here, and that hopefully we can go out and be lights in this world. And it doesn't have to be all the lights, the biggest lights or the brightest lights, but to bring any light into darkness makes the darkness less dark. Thank you so much for this time, and we pray these things in your holy name. Amen.